Hello, my name is Christine Kay. I'm faculty of Behavioral Social Science here at Hartford Community College. Today I have the pleasure of introducing you to the presidential finalist, Dr. David Hinds. Dr. David Hinds recently retired from the teachers' retirement system in Texas after serving a 5-year tenure as president of Victoria College in Victoria, Texas. Prior to joining Victoria College in 2015, he served for 3 years as a senior vice president of Instructional Affairs at Allegheny College here in Maryland. Dr. Hinds earned a Ph.D. from the University of Texas, a Master of Business Administration from the University of Houston, and attended Midland Community College and Austin Community College prior to earning a Bachelor of Science degree from Texas State San Marcos. Dr. Hinds comes from a family of educators dating back to his great-grandparents. His wife, Kim, was a family and consumer science teacher, and their 2 daughters, Carrie and Ellen, both attend their local community college before transferring to universities. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I was telling students, I always look over my shoulder, and then I realize, oh, she's talking about me. I'm sorry. I'm looking for this person that she's talking about, because sometimes it seems like that can't be me, you know. We don't wind up exactly where we thought we would. Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. I apologize. It told me it's got a little delay. That better? Okay. So I had a choice of topics. First of all, thanks for coming and spending the time today. I know that there's several online. I appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me, and I'm looking forward to trying to answer your questions as best I can. I had some choices of topics. I thought this was the most appropriate. What leadership style do you bring to the college, or would you bring to the college where you're chosen as the president? And really, in my mind, that's really asking the question, who is this guy? What drives the decisions and behaviors of this person as a leader? Because it's the person. Sometimes we talk about the president like that's not a person. It's a person. It's a human being, and something is driving that human being's behavior and decisions. And I think that in order to begin to do the thing that I think is most valuable in a leadership position, and that is build trust, you have to know me as a person in order for that trust to begin to be built. And that trust takes time to build, and it takes words and actions, and it takes being genuine. And that's what I would hope to do as a leader first. So a little about me, just kind of about what drives me as a person. I am optimistic, eternally and maybe fatally optimistic. I'm very curious, been curious from the time I could remember. I want to know how things work, what makes something tick. That was a question I was asked in an interview one time, what makes you tick? And I thought that was a great question. And my answer to that question was, what makes me tick is trying to understand what makes other people tick. That's what really is interesting to me. I want human behavior, how we interact with one another is very fascinating to me, how we think, and how relationships get built. And I'm not only curious from kind of that sidewalk psychologist perspective, but I'm also very curious about how things work. I like to tear a small engine apart, and most of the time I can put it back together and it works. Not always. So I like a project. I like working physically. I've always enjoyed being outdoors as a person. I still do today. My wife and I are on this long camping trip right now. My contract ended at Victoria College at the end of August, and I'll maybe that question is going to come up later, but I'm sure you want to know why I left and how long I'm going to stay and that kind of thing. I'm definitely going to be happy to answer that question. But anyway, we're camping. We sold our house. We sold all the cars but one. and we're pulling a 20-foot trailer, and we're living on the road. And this is something that she and I have wanted to do for a long, long time. And it's not been everything we dreamed. It's been more in some ways, and it's been challenging in some ways. And but it's the experience, right? That's where, in my view, that's where the joy in life comes from, is having that experience. And we've been having a good time. I think I have a great sense of humor. My wife doesn't always agree, but I have a sense of humor. I am student-oriented above all else as a leader. My focus is on students, what makes a student successful, what we can do to make them more successful. That is the question I am always asking myself as a leader, and that's what I'm always striving for as a leader. I taught in the classroom for 24 years, including public school teaching. Had thousands of students in my class, many successful, some unsuccessful, just as many of you have had. I cherish my family. I love my work. I love being outdoors. I love puzzles. I love good jokes. I love interesting plays on words. Brain teasers, crossword puzzles, even though I'm terrible at crossword puzzles. My daughter's much, much better than I am. I used to be a Houston Oilers fan, if you know who the Houston Oilers were. I went on a plant-based diet almost a year ago for health reasons, and that has panned out beautifully. And that's kind of me in a nutshell. So what I was taught and what I believe and what's been reinforced in me over my entire lifetime is that everyone matters as a person, as a human being, and we can never forget. And as a leader, you can never forget that you're dealing with a human being. I had a administrative assistant that was working in the office of the chancellor at San Jacinto Community College one time, and I was doing my internship during my Ph.D. program there, and when I came in the office one morning, and I don't know why she said this, but I will never forget it. She said, "If you ever become a president, don't you ever forget that everyone is dealing with something. Everyone has an issue. Everyone has a problem. Everyone has things that you don't know that's going on in their life." And I've never forgotten that, because I think it's very important that we never forget that we are all fallible. We are all human. We are all in this pursuit together. And that's just something that I carry with me always. And I believe that we're in a noble pursuit. I have dedicated my professional life to education. I have been more and less successful in the classroom as a student, depending on what the subject was and what the degree was and what was going on in my life at the time. I'm looking for a handkerchief because my nose is running. So y'all give me just a half a second. Does somebody have a tissue? I apologize. I thought I had a handkerchief in my pocket. Oh, I do. I found it. Wrong pocket. So Simon Sinek talk about the why. Simon Sinek's an author, and he did a famous YouTube video on why great companies are great companies, and he talks about one of the things that distinguishes them is that they don't talk about what they do and they don't talk about how they do it. They talk about why they do it. And I think that's a really important lesson. And to me, it is this noble pursuit that we are making the world a better place by creating knowledge, skills, abilities, attitudes, behaviors among our students. And they go out into the world and make the world a better place. And I don't know what more we could ask for from our work. That is why I'm here. And it goes back to, I love what I do and I believe in what I do. And I think we are in a noble pursuit together. I believe in giving people autonomy to do their work. I don't believe in us versus them. This mentality on some college campuses that the administration is this group of people and that faculty are this group of people and facilities workers are this group of people, and somehow they're different from one another. Their jobs are different, but they're human beings. And I don't understand where that curtain falls between me as a president and you as a staff member, or you as a student, or you as a faculty member. It does not make sense to me. I understand that our jobs are different and our pressures are different, and I do think that curtain falls typically because of lack of communication and because of lack of understanding of the other. So one of the most important things as a president is for me to understand what are the issues, what are the struggles, what are the challenges that sit in front of a group of employees. How can we work to start to remove those? Why? So we can do a better job for students. I am ultimately selfishly motivated in terms of employee satisfaction because I know what that does for students. I also think and believe that I should listen more and talk less, but that's kind of ironic because I'm just talking and you're just listening. So I think the most important job of a president, and I'm not saying the only job, the president has a lot of responsibilities, but I think of institutional culture as the first priority of a president. Because again, how we feel about where we work matters, and when we feel good about where we work, we do better work, and we enjoy our lives, and we are spending an inordinate portion of our lives at work, and we should enjoy it. We should like going to work. And if we don't, let's fix it. Let's figure out why we don't enjoy. And there's always part of the job we don't enjoy, but I'm talking about in general. Do you feel that the work that you do is important? It is. You know it is. Do you feel like the work that you do is appreciated? And is that work challenging? Those are the things that I think makes a person happy in the workplace. And so as a president, because that culture has everything to do with student success, I think that's my first priority, my first job. There's a short, famous quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast. 2 or 3 different people have been credited with saying that, so I can't even tell you who really said it, but I love that quote because what it says is the culture has to come first. Planning matters, organizational structure matters, but they pale by comparison to the culture of the institution. So if I were chosen as president, what could you expect from me? And you should have high expectations of me. This is an important position. It's a well-paid position. And it will have impact on you, and it will have impact on students if it's done right. Positive impact, obviously. I think that the list is fairly self-explanatory. I am very fair-minded. I don't have tolerance for people being disrespected. I don't have tolerance for people being treated unkindly. That's just part of the core of who I am. Nothing really upsets me other than that. I do not take that well, and usually it just breaks my heart. I'm not saying I get mad and throw things across the room. It's just hard for me to take when I see that. So you would always have my respect. I would expect yours. We would always respect students together, community together, and we would be in that noble pursuit. together. I would be your advocate, the advocate for the college, the advocate for the employees, the advocate for the students. One of the most important jobs after culture of a president is to make sure that the resources are in place for the college to continue to do what it does, to continue its operations. And while I don't like the fact that I have to talk about money as much as I do have to talk about money as a president, that's part of the job, and that's part of what I have to do. That includes working with the foundation, that includes advocating at the state level with the legislature, that includes coordinating and collaborating with the other presidents of colleges in Maryland, and so on. I don't know how I'm doing on time. Am I about wrapped up? Okay, I'm going to say that's the end of that, and I'd be happy to answer your questions best I can.
Hello, and thank you for being here. I'm Dr. Flores. I'm the director for the Office of Student Life, and I have a couple questions for you. So as you know, one of HCC's value is equity and inclusion. Can you talk to us about your experience with inclusion as it relates to implementing, enforcing, supporting, or advocating for a more inclusive campus community? And what initiatives or projects you plan to take on to enhance equity inclusion here at HCC?
Thank you. So this question is obviously more and more a question on the minds of college employees and in reality, the general public. I'll start with the statement that I made in my remarks. I start from a basis of being fair-minded. I want to talk a little bit about the philosophy and then a little bit about what I've seen happen. So I talked to the students about this. Community colleges are certainly not the solution, but are a very important part of the solution to the civil discord that we're seeing in our country now. And the reason, and I think they're part of the solution for many reasons, but I think the core reason that they are part of the solution is that they are the place of access for everyone to get into, to find an opportunity in higher education. Our colleges need to look like our communities. The demographic of our student body, the demographic of our employees should look like the communities they serve. So for Harford County, if the demographic of the student body doesn't look like the demographic of the county, then we start to collect data and ask the question why. If the demographic of the student body doesn't look like the demographic of Harford County, then we start to look at data and we start to ask why. I will tell you what experience I've had as a leader, but I will not say what I think would need to be done when I got here, because I don't know Harford well enough to answer that question. Just as evidence from a supervisor perspective, I hired the first black male faculty member at Brazosport College sometime in the 90s, I'm ashamed to say. And that wasn't because, somebody was trying to prevent black males from getting faculty positions at Brazosport College. It was frankly because there were no applicants in the pool. So we started to look at what's the recruiting process and how do we get a more representative pool so we have a broader selection to choose from. So I think that's one of the things you would want to look at some point and audit to make sure that that hiring practice makes sense and the recruiting practice makes sense. So I would do that investigation, although I would not pretend to know if there's a change needed. I think bringing speakers on campus has been useful and informative for students and for employees good speakers. I think you've got to be really good about your selection process of speakers and make sure that they're delivering a positive message, a message of pulling together. Don't want to shy away from the facts and the realities, but also want to be, as I said before, eternally optimistic about where do we go, given what we know. Back to why the Discord is why we're part of the answer to the Discord and why it's so important. I think that, and I said this earlier, the democracy is being tested, and I think it's been tested from its foundation. I think the democracy has been tested over and over and over again, and I believe that it is being tested now, and I believe that it will be tested in different ways again. And how we respond to that will have something to do with an educated middle class. And so the community college is part of our ability to sustain a middle class. And I think when we lose traction on an educated middle class, we lose traction on the democratic institutions.
Thank you. And then my second question is, you mentioned being student-oriented. What would be your main priority to support student groups, and how do you plan to strengthen HCC's relationship between students and administrators?
So in the question is the assumption that the relationship needs to be strengthened, that the relationship is not currently strong enough. I would say that the answer to that question lies in the same answer to the question if that was a question about employees or students. Because again, I'm going back to the fundamental that we're all human beings and we're all looking for the same things and we all have the same needs, basic needs. Being accessible is first. Being accessible, being seen on campus, having an open door for real to anyone that comes to the president's office. I don't know if folks at Harvard are accustomed to that. I don't know if the folks at Harvard are comfortable with that, but if I am chosen as the president, there is an open door because of who I am as a person. If someone comes to my office with a problem, I am a pleaser and I am a problem solver. And so my natural inclination is to have that conversation. I would always be careful about, and we talked about this at lunch, where's the chain of command? And are they in this conversation? Because what I don't want to happen is for someone to come around their supervisor to my office and tell me the problem that is happening in their division that their supervisor should be solving, and they don't even know the problem exists. If the supervisor's the problem, that's a completely different conversation. So unless there's a reason to leave the chain of command out of the conversation, I would work to getting the chain of command back in the conversation. I don't mind having that conversation up front. I'm not going to say, somebody comes to my office and they tell me, I've got an issue, and if my question is, have you talked to your supervisor? I'm going to ask that question. And the answer is no. I'm not going to say, well, the discussion's over, because I don't want to hear it because you need to go talk to your supervisor. I just don't operate that way. I don't shut people down that way. I'll listen to the problem, and then I will ask the question, can your supervisor help solve this problem? And we'll start that conversation. So the question was about students, but the answer is really the same. Access and being available, I think, is critical. Being consistent in behavior, being consistent in being approachable. I am comfortable wearing a jacket, but you won't see me in a jacket most of the time. I don't believe in putting up barriers. I don't rely on a pedigree, a degree, a title, a position of power. I rely on my ability as a human being to connect and communicate with other human beings.
I promised I'd give you a time check, so I want to let you know we're doing well with time. It is 1:25. And I know we have several questions from the chat forum, so I'd like to intersperse those throughout the questions that we receive here from the floor today. So our colleague Frank Mayer asks, how do we adjust to a transformation in society where the value of a college degree is not considered, in many cases, worth the money that students invest, especially given the debt load students have?
Repeat the question for me one more time. I want to make sure I heard it correctly.
How do we adjust to a transformation in society where the value of a college degree is not considered, in many cases, worth the money that students invest?
So I think that is the greatest challenge that community colleges face now. I think that is an absolutely excellent question. Because, and I think it's happened for several reasons. I think that our shift in responsibility of who pays for education is partially at issue, because the reality is students are bearing a larger portion of the burden. Even if the education overall costs the same to provide, the shift in who pays for that education is real, and it has been moving and is moving toward the student paying. So the reality is, when I went to undergrad, and I'm just going to make up a number because I don't know the exact right number, my guess is I was paying for about 25% or 20% of what it cost for me to go to college. Today, that number is probably 40 or 50%. So the shift of who pays then generates, okay, it's a different question now. I'm paying a lot more. Is this worth it? So just that in and of itself generates the question. I think media is partially responsible, and I don't think it's intentional, and I don't think there's an evil plan afoot, but I think that people latch on to anecdotal stories about the student that got $200,000 worth of debt and doesn't have a job prospect. And then the rest of that article is not, that's the lead, and it would be nice if there was a follow-up, but on average, this is what a bachelor's degree does for someone. The reality is, in my view, and I will always maintain this argument, that there is no better investment in your own future than higher education. And I think numbers bear that out over and over and over again. So to answer the question, how do we get over that hump? We have got to communicate directly with students who don't consider themselves college material and help them understand that they can afford to go to college. We've got to separate ourselves we've got to separate ourselves in the mind of the consumer from college, whatever college is in the mind of consumer, right? Because they don't make the separation because they're sophisticated enough consumers, but they don't live in our world. They don't know what we know. We know there's a big difference between community college and four-year. We know there's a big difference between community college and trade school. We know there's a big difference between community college and private school. They don't know that in many cases. So to educate that consumer, and I'm talking about educating that consumer in Harford County. I'm talking about people going out and speaking to small community groups and helping them understand the value of coming to a community college. I don't think we can solve that problem amongst ourselves for the society, but I think we can make a lot of headway in this market in Harford County. And you'll hear me talk about students as consumers. You'll hear me talk about market. I have a business background. I don't consider students widgets. I had thousands of them come through my classrooms. They're human beings. But I also know that we have a budget, and we have a bottom line, and we have a consumer, and we have people who pay for what they're getting here. And I talked to the students a lot this morning about the value of what they are getting at Harvard College and to evaluate for themselves. Am I getting what I am putting in or more? Or do I see that that will pay off down the line beyond what I've invested, the time and the money or someone else's money that's been invested? Yes.
Hi there, thank you for your presentation today. My name is Jessie Thompson. I'm the instructional specialist for adult literacy and continuing education and training.
Okay.
So I have two questions. One is very basic. What is your experience in past colleges working with the adult basic education student, English as a second language, and students trying to earn their GED, HIST, or GRE degrees? We do GED here.
So you've got that. That's one question, and you're going to have another one?
I'm gonna have
Okay,
that.
okay. Thank you for not asking them both at the same time. So we're at Brazosport College, where I taught. We also did the Adult Basic Ed GED programs, and my interface with those programs at that time as a division chair was I saw that as a potential to bring students into more advanced programs, credit programs, to help them see, okay, you've completed this, what's next for you? And this could be it. This, not necessarily this program. And when I went out and presented as a division chair, most of the time I talked about higher education in general, not necessarily about the programs that I was responsible for, because I think that's students, I don't believe in a hard sell. I don't think I need to sell a student on taking a computer science curriculum. I think that students need to be given good information about why it's in their best interest to pursue higher education, whatever that is. Then when that decision's made, we'll talk about a program. So I would go to the adult basic ed graduating groups and talk to them about, could you be in this program? Could you be in that program? Are you going to go on to college, whatever college was? And that's a scary word for somebody coming out of an adult basic ed program. So then at Victoria College, we had the adult basic ed and GED programs there as well, and we had about 1,000 students a semester participating, and I thought we did a good job of putting those programs out in the communities where those people lived. And I think that was one of the things that we did that was very effective was, campus is a scary place for some people. And I know sometimes it's hard for us to imagine that if we're comfortable in that environment, and that's kind of the world we live in. But if you go to the college, somebody in Harford County says, I'm going to the college, and they say that to somebody who's never been to college and who's only driven by the campus, they're like, wow, you go there? You and I may not think of Harvard as prestigious in the hierarchy of universities, first, research institutions, state flagship institutions, community colleges, trade schools. We may not think of Harvard College as prestigious, but for someone who's never gone to college and who doesn't have a family member that's gone to college, that's wow. You go there, and what they're really saying is, I could never go there. So breaking down that barrier and helping students who wouldn't normally think of themselves as college students, helping them think of themselves as college students, I think is a huge part of the puzzle for us, and I think we always need to keep that in mind. There was one more thought just escaped me. It'll come back. I'm sure of it.
Okay, the second question is from the someone in the CET department. Non-credit students at Harford Community College do not receive the same level of service provided our credit population. Non-credit students do not receive orientation services or advising services. Our non-credit students struggle to navigate and find information they seek on our web pages. The registration, records, and payment experience of these students is also considerably more cumbersome than on the credit side. Given the predicted growth of career training and continuing education programs in coming years, how would you plan to improve the student experience of our non-credit population?
Okay, so I would say that if that is in fact correct, there's a real problem because a quarter of your contact hours are generated out of continuing ed. It's a quarter of what the college does. It's not a small piece anymore, and I think the question gets to that due to the growing demand for continuing ed, and that will continue to grow, and if we're smart, we'll pay attention to it. The college is here to help people move to a better quality of life, whether that means adult basic ed or GED or non-credit or credit or transfer or skills training or athletics, whatever it is, its purpose is to move that person to a better place in their life. So if we've got a section of the college, and here's the part of the question I don't like, as compared to credit, because we need to pay attention to that student. We need to pay attention to what that student needs. And if that student is not getting what they need, and we'll know because they won't complete the program. That's usually how you know a student's not getting what they need, whether they're credit or non-credit or adult basic ed. And often out of our control, right? Their life may get in the way. That's why we lose so many of our students. But the point being is that is a student of Harford College, and if they're not getting what they need, we need to figure out what do they need and how do we get them what they need, and that has nothing to do with credit. That has to do with the needs of that student. So this is a very common question, credit versus non-credit, skills training versus academic transfer, athletics versus student clubs, whatever comparison you want to make. In my mind, they are all students. They are all here to improve their lives, and it is our job to help them get there.
We have another question from our chat forum, and this comes from Tony Epstein. She asks, as a community college president, how do you approach and balance the need for workforce training, transfer programs, and enrichment programs while facing budget challenges?
That is a similar question. And it is a little bit different because now it's not really a competing question, but it is, let me go back to the first question. It's kind of like the question, which of your children do you love the most? We love all our children. So now, how do you give the child what they need when that's not what the other child needs? The other child needs something different. And there are limited resources. There are unlimited wants, and there are unlimited resources. Excuse me, limited. I wish there were unlimited. Limited resources. So I am a big believer in defining the difference between need and want. We need to identify what is needed, what is core, what is critical, what is crucial. And if the budget can meet that baseline, then we talk about what else can we do for students to move them to success. Again, whether it's a credit student or non-credit student or workforce student. So the balance is advocate for all the time. If there is something going on in a non-credit program or there's something going on in a credit program where students don't have the lab equipment they need, so to me that's a need, then that's where we go first. I've got to have the right instructor, I've got to have the right equipment, I've got to have the right field experience because those things are going to move a student to success. So the way you balance that is you compare, I'll just say student A and student B and what they are or are not getting. Student A is getting 20 hours of mentoring time and they need, whatever need means, 25. Student B doesn't have the right lab equipment. That's an easy decision. Get the right lab equipment. I want student A to have 25 hours of mentoring time, but But I also know that the lab equipment and the lab experience is more critical to the student's success, to that student B's success, than the extra 5 hours of mentoring, or is likely more critical than the extra 5 hours of mentoring for student A. And we don't make decisions that discreetly and that clearly, but that's the frame of mind.
Thank you, Dr. Hinds.
Hi.
My name is Patrick, and I oversee and lead our enrollment management teams. Going back to your presentation on decision making, I just want a little bit more information from you about how you would go about prioritizing our strategic plan, which includes our strategic enrollment management plan, to create a pace of change that is sustainable and just prioritize a lot of the initiatives that we have going on campus.
Okay, so one of the dangers we run, and I'm kind of reading between the lines, and you can tell me if I'm doing this correctly or not. One of the things we have been faced with and challenged with in higher ed, and I think in community colleges in particular, is initiative fatigue. There are so many things we want to do and so many good ideas that we want to chase that we don't fix on one, commit to that one, commit to its completion, measure its results, and decide whether that was successful or not, and whether or not to invest more resources in that way or not before something else goes in front of us and it looks like something really good, and we want to do that too. So I would say that my philosophy around that is do a lot of analysis on the change you want to make that one change that you are highly confident is going to benefit students, get that implemented and get it implemented well, and then let's talk about what we're going to do next. Because I think one of the things that we do, and I talked about this at lunch today, one of the things we do in higher ed, and it all comes from the heart. We talk a lot about what we want to do, and we don't spend enough time doing it with students. And it's not because we don't want to do it with students. It's because that we want to do everything. We want to get it all done. But the reality is we are of limited capacity as human beings. We have limited time. We have limited attention spans. We have to eat at some point. We have to sleep. And we have limited resources, as the question came earlier. So we have to decide what's the priority, what's the anticipated impact, and that looks like a really good use of our time and our money, and let's go do that one thing and get it done right. I think, yeah. Oh.
Well, thanks for coming to our college, Dr. Hinds. And, you know, I noticed that RV in the parking lot. I thought maybe that was yours.
It's not.
Okay,
It may be mine. I should mine. I have to go
You told us
look.
your story about driving around. Okay. I've been in higher ed and community colleges for, you know, the better part of a quarter century. I tell my students since the last millennium, and including 4 different administrations here at Harvard. And one of the things I've noticed is pretty consistent, that every administration has its own ideas and implements plans and then academic organization, you know, whether it's divisional realignment or new kinds of structures involving deans, chairs, coordinators, directors within divisions. And what's consistent, I've noticed, is that there's always people alienated, that not everyone agrees with those decisions, and I think that's to be expected. But how would you go about, in that decision-making process, trying to minimize that kind of alienation by involving key stakeholders?
Okay, so I would start by saying I don't believe in change for change's sake. We talk about continuous improvement a lot as an industry at higher ed, especially community colleges, talk about continuous improvement a lot. I think sometimes that generates the behavior or the idea that if we're not changing, something's wrong. And to use an old cliche, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think that structure matters, but again, it pales by comparison to culture. If we can build the culture of trust, culture of being satisfied and gratified and happy in our work, then, and build the trust that the reason that we're having this discussion is because we think we can make the college a better place for students. Is a restructure going to make the college a better place for students, and if so, how? And if not, why are we talking about it? So I have no preconceived notion of what the structure ought to look like. I think I can work pretty well with any community college structure because most of them are very similar. None of them are, there's no very strange, off-the-wall structure that I can see. So I wouldn't come in presuming that a change is needed. Now, if somebody came to me, or a group came to me and said, look, we need a change in structure here, and this is why, I would work with that direct report of mine and ask them, okay, this has been brought to me. Somebody thinks that this organizational change needs to happen. Do you think that needs to happen, and why or why not? Has this been brought to you before? Have you had this discussion with your direct reports? Yes, we've had that discussion. No, I don't agree. Okay, let's have a conversation about why you don't agree and why you don't see this as a needed change. Have that give and take. And then if there is a decision point where an org structure is going to take place, then you have to have a lot of conversation with the folks that are going to be directly affected by that change. My supervisor is going to change. I'm going to be in a different place in the organization. My title is going to change. So but how is your work going to change? And that's something I think that sometimes people, I think we can make an org change bigger in our mind than it really is, because at the end of the day, my job didn't even really change. I'm still working with students in the same way. I still spend my time the same way. I still do the same things. I still have the same set of priorities. I might be reporting to someone else. Do you not want to report to that person? Why or why not? And it could be personal. It may not be. It may be, this is about respect and prestige. This is about, I don't work well with that person. This is about, so to get at the core of where the resistance to change comes from, I think is important in the conversation. Involve the people that are going to be affected by the change and understand why they're concerned. Try to allay those concerns. Try to assure them that this is best for the college and here's why. Lay out the argument logically, clearly, transparently. I think there's always the danger of making a decision and not communicating it clearly enough or not getting enough input prior to the decision. That's one danger for a president and the cabinet. The folly, and that's different than danger, the folly is to do it without talking to people. The folly is to do it intentionally without input. That's when you lose trust. So that level of trust, which goes directly to college culture, is always in the forefront of my mind. And that would certainly apply to this potential change in structure.
We have a question from Allison Amato. She asks, with the September 22nd executive order, some institutions are suspending their diversity programming. With diversity being central to HCC's mission, how would you preserve diversity in our programming and teaching?
Showing my ignorance. Tell me about the executive order. Can the person clarify the executive order for me? Or can someone? This comes from camping in Wyoming.
I believe this was a executive order from President Trump about diversity training required to provide multiple perspectives and not always advocate that, our history is wrong and that we're flawed, that type of approach. And I think it's the mandate was that federal programming and federal dollars could not be spent or allocated to that other type of diversity training.
Yes, I did read this. I apologize for not making the connection. We're in such a weird and in some respects divisive time in our politics that it's distressing. To me as a citizen of the democracy, it's distressing to me as just a caring person. And while I understand it on some levels, I just don't get it. I just don't understand it. Because I'm a believer in common ground. To answer the question, let me ask another follow-up question. Are there Harvard dollars directly tied to the executive order that are in question now? Okay. So I guess what I would say is that, and I'm just going to use a pretend. Let's pretend we had $10,000 to provide some diversity training and bring in some diversity speakers, and we felt like that was a priority at Harvard, and we don't want to lose that component and that conversation with our students and our employees in our community. Frankly, one of the advantages, one of the strengths of Harvard is you're in a good financial position. You're not flush with, no community college is flush with cash, but you're in a good, strong financial position. So taking it out of the theoretical into the practical, the money's there. If it's important, use it that way. If we're going to lose $10,000 in federal funding because of some executive order and we think that's an important thing to do, then do it. The executive order shouldn't prevent you from doing what you think is important. That's not defiance. That's staying with the priorities of the institution. Defiance would be spending the federal dollars in defiance of the executive order. That would be a different question, and I would never do that. Even if I could, I would never do that. Because that puts not because of me as a person, but because that puts the institution in the crosshairs. And you would never, ever, ever want to put the institution at odds with the federal government. Because for obvious reasons. I'll just stop there. Yes? I have 5 questions. No. We don't have enough time. Okay, good. Not all at once. I know, I'm teasing.
I'm Dottie Miller,
Hi,
professor of English, and I'm asking questions that were funneled through faculty council.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Let me ask a question real quick. How much time do we have left? 20 minutes, okay. I want to make sure I don't get to the end of my time and I haven't answered all the questions, so I got
If it looks like you're doing the wrong thing, I'll be standing up again.
All right.
Okay. In past years, faculty and staff had regular access to the Board of Trustees, but in recent years, faculty and staff struggled with a campus communication policy in which the president had access to the board and other parties did not. As we continue our accreditation self-study, how would you rewrite the policy statement for faculty and staff access to the board?
Okay, so make sure I understand the question. So a policy was in place where there was access. there was a policy change. This is a board policy, correct? There's a policy change implemented by the prior president that limited that access,
Yes.
and the board approved that policy change.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. I guess that would be the first part of my
Followed
question.
it.
Say again?
They followed it.
They followed
whether
it. So whether they
approved it or not.
adopted it as a board or not. Okay. So if there's a policy in place with the board, and the president advises the board to change that policy, and the board adopts it, that is the policy of the college. And I will tell you, I am beholden to the policies of the board. However, to answer the question, I would look a lot more than sideways at that, personally. Because if there's not a clear, articulated, rational, transparent reason for that policy change, then there's a different problem. I can't answer the question yet because I don't know enough about the board and I don't know enough about the college, but I would say that more communication is always better, creates more understanding. I would also say that as a president, that kind of question makes me nervous a little bit because I report to the board and they hire me and I'm supposed to be the representative of the college to the board. So I would want to be careful about what does that policy look like? What did the old policy look like? What does the new policy look like? And is it the right policy for the college? I want the right communication going to the board and I don't want to block anybody from going to the board. And you know, just on a personal side, a lot less formal answer. This is America, man. Call a board member. You know, I mean, I think that's just wrong of me to try to prevent someone to talk to a board member. That's just not the right thing to do. So I'd have to look at the policy. I would want to review the policy with the parties that have concern with it and work with the board to say, look, we've got some employees that have a concern with this. Here's a proposed change. Are you comfortable with this? I am, because I wouldn't take it to them if I wasn't comfortable with it. I am comfortable with this change. Do we want to move forward with it? And you know, you got to have a record public vote, and that policy has got to be in the policy manual in order for it to be in effect, in my view.
Thank you. An atmosphere of completion and transfer permeates higher education right now, particularly at community colleges. How will you instill the value of standards and quality of learning in this type of environment?
Okay, so that's a great question, and a concern I had as a faculty member for years with this, you know, faster, better, cheaper. You might get faster and you might get cheaper, but you're probably not going to get better, and that's just, you know, the reality of time spent on task. The standard that you want to require a student to reach, the proficiency that you want a student to reach in order to say, yes, that student understands, that student has the capacity, that student has the skill, the knowledge, they can analyze, they can compute, they can critically think, whatever the goal is, whatever the metric is, that metric is the purview of the faculty. And while it is important for students to graduate and for them to reach that goal, that piece of paper is not what is of value. And we all know that. What is of value is the experience and the knowledge and the capacity gained by being engaged in higher education. I got my Ph.D. from the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm proud of that. But I will tell you that the most difficult and most challenging course that I took in my Ph.D. program was the course I transferred into the University of Texas from the University of Houston. What I'm saying is that the letters and the grades and the papers are just symbols of what really happened, what transformation really took place. Because when that student goes out into the workplace and is not able to communicate effectively and is not able to balance the budget correctly and is not able to express ideas or think critically, then that's a direct reflection on us and the quality of the education they did or did not receive at this institution. The pressure for completion will always be there as long as we are funded publicly. Legislators want to be able to say to their constituents, I am holding the institution accountable. And how do they demonstrate that? By number of graduates, number of completers, number of degrees. So we can't ignore it, but we can put it in its correct place.
Community colleges are open access institutions, but often resources and curriculum are limited and devalued for students who are not quite ready for the rigors of college. What are your thoughts about meeting the needs of underprepared students at HCC?
So, going back to the idea that we're part of the solution for the preservation of the democracy, you'll hear me say that more than once. I do believe that the United States is a land of opportunity. I do believe that we are a big part of that. If they're not prepared, it's our role to get them prepared. It doesn't mean we lower the standard, but it means we put to the extent possible, we put the supports in place to get them prepared and to help them see themselves as college students, as thinkers, as successful people. Resources are always limited, but that's part of the job of the president, is to say, look, to the legislature, we've got this charge, this mandate, mission. I need your help because I need resources to get this population of students, or this one student, we can talk about one student or we can talk about a population of students. I need your help getting them from where they are to the point where they're ready to do what we consider college credit work. And that will be met with limited success, but it will be met with some success. So part of the job of the president is to advocate for those resources. We can't have, it kind of goes back to your other question about completion. We can't have more completers with the same quality with the exact same resources. That is in fact, in my mind, impossible. So we have to advocate for resources. We have to get these students the things that they need so they can be successful.
This is question 3. You might
Okay.
only think it's question 7. How would you respond to on-demand requests for financial information at the college, particularly with academic maintenance and capital projects? On-demand means somebody from within the institution asks you, how much is it going to cost? Why did you make this decision?
That's my attitude toward that is give as much information as I possibly can, be as transparent as I possibly can. This is a public institution. Those are public dollars, and the public and the employees and the students have the right to know how the money's being spent.
Next, question 4.
Question 4.
Based on what you know about Harford Community College, what do you perceive to be our strengths, and what changes would you make as president?
So the strengths, from what I understand, you are in a good financial position, and that is, if that were not the case, that would be a really difficult place to start from. But you are fortunate, and the next president of this institution is fortunate that you are in a good financial position. That is a strength. I think that the There is some, it seems to me, some forming stability among the cabinet. And that, when I mean stability, I mean people that are going to be here for a while to get the job done. The board, from the two that I've met and talked to that are on the search committee, are committed board members and committed to the mission and the vision of the college. For real. And that is a really good sign. That my gut tells me if those were the two that were selected to head the search, that your board is committed to the mission and the vision of the college. That's a huge strength. That's a big win. There are boards all over this country that are dysfunctional, and I don't perceive that that's happening at your board. How many folks are online? So you've got almost 200 people paying attention to this conversation. That is a huge strength. It shows that you care. It shows that you have hope. It shows that you have optimism about where the college is going, and that you believe that this decision matters. I see that as a strength. If there was no online component, and this is all the people that showed up, then that would not be a good sign. But there's a lot of people paying attention to this conversation, and that's really good. I think being in Maryland is a strength. Maryland has a culture of valuing higher ed more than most states. I can tell you are much better funded than community colleges in the state of Texas, and I don't mean just that from a financial position of the college itself, but I mean that says something about the value that the community places on higher education. We used to boast, because that's what sometimes we do in Texas, that we were the third most affordable system in the country. Well, that sounds good from a perspective of a student that's got to pay for college, but that also sounds like maybe there's not enough resources being put into higher ed. So I think Maryland as a state is 12th out of 50 in terms of funding per student. That's across all higher ed. I don't know the number for community college students, but I would guess it's close to the same. I'm not saying you get the same funding as the Maryland flagship. I know you don't. But I am saying that you probably rank somewhere in that same area as compared to other community college systems in the country. So that's a big advantage. And it's Maryland, and it's beautiful here, and it's just really nice.
Pardon me 1 second. Let me just let you know that we have about 6 minutes left in our forum, and I know Dottie has one more question. If it's possible, and maybe we might have an abbreviated answer to the next question, just so we can take one more from our audience
Okay,
today.
speed it up. That was so nice the way you said
Thank
that.
you.
Okay.
What have you learned about collaboration and leadership as a result of your contrary initiative to establish a common course numbering system with all the 2-year and 4-year public institutions in Maryland?
I guess I didn't know it was contrary because I left. No, just kidding. So I think that what I learned from that is that I've always been a believer, and I still am, that you don't invite or engage change for anything but the right reason. You don't invite or engage change unless it's in the best interest of students. That's always been true in my experience and in my practice. I think what I learned from that is there's always been a little bit of naivety with me as a person. I'm a naive person in some regards. And, you know, when I took that project on, I was the president of the academic officers group, and frankly, didn't get enough input. Didn't really know what I was tackling. Didn't really understand some of the concerns that some of the faculty had and some of the colleges had. didn't get any resistance from the chief academic officers. I wouldn't say that I was thrown to the wolves because I don't believe that. But I will say that there are some things that you kind of wish I would have liked to have stayed longer to see what result might have happened had I stayed. I understand why it went away in my absence, and I'm not saying it would have been any different in my presence, but I would have liked to have been witness to the conversations and the process and the death or the life of the project. So what I learned from that is make sure you've got enough input.
Thank you. There's one over here.
Hi, I'm Miriam Wigglesworth. I'm a faculty member in the CBAT division here on campus. And my question is in reference to earlier in the presentation. You had mentioned leaving your former institution and selling your house and taking a road trip with your wife. And now you're here in Maryland, Harford Community College. So I just wanted to get back to the why.
Sure,
Why Harford,
yes.
why here?
Thank you very much. And I'm really glad you asked that question because I absolutely wanted to talk about that because I had a mentor tell me one time they're going to want to know why you left and how long you're going to stay. Why I left. First, I want to talk about why I went back to Texas for two reasons. We talked about this at lunch as well. So I went back to Texas for two reasons. One, my mother was critically ill, and it was important for me to be closer to her. And two, I had invested many years in the Texas retirement system, and I wanted to be able to go back and finish that commitment to the system so I could reap the benefits of being in that retirement system. And Texas has a good teacher retirement system. So I don't think I'll ever surprise anyone. I gave my board 2 years notice that I was leaving. I don't know of another president that's done that. I'm sure there has been, but I don't know who it would be. I gave my public resignation a year from my leaving. And the bottom line is the reason I left was I had committed the years that I needed to commit into the Texas retirement system, and it doesn't make sense for me financially to work in Texas anymore. It would make more sense for me to not work at all, or it would make more sense for me to go out of state and continue to work. And I think I've got a lot left in me, and I think my best work is ahead of me, and I'm not ready for that yet. So that's why the leaving. How long am I staying? You know, I don't ever want to be where I'm not wanted. I want to be in a place where I'm working for people who want me working for them, and I want to work for the people that I'm working for. I want to be in a place where people see me as the leader they want, not the leader they have. So how long will I stay? You know, I think a decade, maybe. I mean, 8 years, maybe 12 years, maybe. I don't know the spot on answer, but there's no exit plan back to Texas, and there's no exit plan out of Maryland if I come here. Did I answer the whole question? Why Harford? So part of it is the size of the institution. I love a small to mid-sized college. I think that's my comfort zone. That's that's where I think I can be effective. I think Harford has a tremendous amount going for it. I think there is a commitment to students here. I think there is a commitment to real transformational education here. That students can come here and have their lives changed. And from every conversation I've had, there's nothing that's led me to believe anything different. I think it fits my personality and my leadership style, and I think I have a lot to offer, and I want to contribute and serve. Yes?
question to you is, based on your experience, what do you think, well, let me rephrase that because I know you really think about the questions that are being asked. So my question to you is, do you think it's important to have supports in place for adjunct faculty? And if you think they are important, why or why not, and what would they be?
Okay, so short answer, yes. An adjunct faculty member is just as important and just as critical to the student as a full-time. The student doesn't know the difference between a full-time faculty member and an adjunct faculty member. They know the difference between their instructors, but they don't know, or frankly don't care, whether one of them is full-time and one of them is part-time. What they care about is, am I welcome here? Can I learn here? Can I gain from this experience? Is this in my best interest? Is my time and my money being well spent? They don't care whether that's a full-time or a part-time teacher. So that teacher, that faculty member, has to have the skills and the resources they need to deliver a quality experience. It is that simple in my mind. That's not valuing one person over another. That's saying that the student experience shouldn't be shaded or tainted by whether they're being taught by a full-time faculty member or a part-time faculty member. Now, I will tell you, when I was a full-time faculty member, I would always say, well, of course it's better for them to have me. I'm a full-time faculty member. We like to think of ourselves as important, and we like to think of ourselves as delivering quality, but that doesn't mean that the adjunct instructor is not doing the same, and we don't need to support them in their ability to do the same. Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name's Anne-Marie Perfili.
Hi.
And following along the same theme, what is, based on your experience, a distinction in your mind between, and I don't think it's been very well defined here at Harvard, the distinction between tenured and non-tenured faculty, and what's the difference in your mind?
So in my mind, and I've been in a couple different colleges where tenure meant different things, and I don't know exactly what it means here, but I did have this conversation a little bit with Tim yesterday. I think that what tenure means is you, first and foremost, you are being respected, for lack of a better way to say it, for your commitment to good teaching. To me, that's what tenure should mean. That is a badge of honor. That means I've met the standard. I have been considered of this value at the institution. I'm a tenured faculty, and I'm proud to say that, and that means something to me. That is meaningful to me. So its symbolic value is, I think the symbolic value is important. The real value, I think, and I don't know how pay structure works here, but with greater I used to tell my kids all the time, with greater responsibility comes greater reward. And that's, to me, that's kind of an American ideal. It also means that, now I got to be really careful how I say this. I'm gonna say, it's going to be replayed to me someday. I'm going to say I didn't say that. It also means that, back up and answer that question with a little bit more background. Faculty are critical, and I don't mean critical in a negative way. Faculty are critical thinkers. Faculty are questioners. Faculty are, by their nature, question, and I won't say everything, but by their nature, question. And tenure should give the sense of, I have the ability to ask those questions without the fear of repercussion. And frankly, I'll tell you, everybody should feel that they can ask questions without repercussion, because they're just questions. They're not threats. So we have to have an open dialogue. Tenure means, I think in some ways, I know when I was tenured, I felt a little emboldened and a little empowered, and in a good way, that I could ask questions that maybe other people weren't comfortable asking, or ask questions that other people weren't willing to ask. or maybe ask questions that other people hadn't thought to ask. And I think it probably provides a different process if there is a personnel issue. And I imagine it does. I imagine there's a different process for that for faculty here. And I want to end this answer, and I know we're running out of time, with, and I think this is incredibly important for me to say, that doesn't mean faculty are more important than anyone else. It means it's different, and that's okay. We're all human beings. We all want to be respected. We all want to be trusted. We all want to trust our leader. And usually, when I send an email, I send it. We used to have 2 email distributions at Victoria College. One was faculty, and one was staff, and one was students. We had a third one. There wasn't an employee distribution list. That made no sense to me, and I thought it made the completely wrong. I thought it sent the complete wrong message, and I basically said I'm not using either one of those unless I just want to talk to faculty about something, or I just want to talk to staff about something, which is never. When I send out a college-wide communication, it goes out to every employee of the college. I want an employee distribution list. It didn't exist. We are all in this together. We are all in the effort, in the noble pursuit to try to move students from where they are to a better place. That's why we all should be coming to work every day. So we are different in our roles and responsibilities. We are the same in our goal.
Time limit for today, so I think it is time for us to close. If you're ready to close.
Does that mean I get to say something, or
Yes,
are you
sir.
running me off stage? Okay.
No, I would like for you to close us out.
Well, I just would say, again, thank you for your time. I do think it's really important that this many people are listening and paying attention. It's an important decision for the institution. When I stand up here and say 8, 10, 12 years, man, that's a long time. You want to be selecting the right person if they're going to be here 8, 10, 12 years. I'm committed to the pursuit, and I would be humbled and proud to be your president. And you've given me this much time, and I appreciate it. And Kurt can get me any information. If you've got a follow-up question later, I'm happy to email somebody. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Dr. Hinds, on behalf of the Presidential Search Committee, thank you very much for coming to campus today to meet with our employees. And also to my fellow colleagues here, thank you very much for being in the audience and also being online via our YouTube channel. We want to encourage everyone to take a minute today to visit the Presidential Search page on the website, hartford.edu Presidential Search, where you can fill out the feedback survey for Dr. Hinds. The survey's going to be open today, and all the surveys for candidates close tomorrow, Saturday, October 10th. And that concludes today's forum. Thank you all, and have a wonderful day.